The fur trade started basically in the late 1500s. There were so many religious holidays during mainly almost half the year. So fish was an important item that had to be observed, eaten on various days. So the Portuguese, the British, and the Spanish were all fishing in various waters, and they realized that on the Grand Banks in Newfoundland there were tremendous amounts of codfish. So the French got involved in this also, and when they came over here, they had to go on land to dry the fish before they brought it back to either France or the other countries. Well, upon doing this, they started intermingling with the natives on shore, and one thing led to another, and they traded the knives they had and kettles and stuff like that to these natives who were using very primitive methods during that time. Also, the beaver became extinct in Europe. So what they did was they started trading with Russia for beaver, and the French, it was mainly done by the Dutch and the Spanish at that time. So the French realized that they could obtain the beaver hides from the natives that they encountered on the shores of Newfoundland when they were drying their fish. Now the beaver was the main fur looked for in the fur trade because the fur hats that were used, the beaver fur was made into felt, and the hats that were made in Europe, they found that the beaver fur felt was the best type of felt to use for these hats. So the beaver became the main trade item. So as time went on, at first all the natives came to Montreal for the trade fairs there. They brought the beaver hides and the other hides that they brought there, caught also to Montreal, and traded them for the various items that they needed. Kettles, pots, knives, awls, tomahawks, cloth, things like that. So by the natives coming to Montreal, the items that they received from the French were worth a lot. They would get a lot of the items for maybe one beaver hide. So as time went on, what happened was the French started traveling to where the Indian villages were at in New France. And this actually doubled the cost of what the natives obtained. So for instance, 12 knives when they came to Montreal were worth one beaver. But now, on the other hand, when the French traveled to where the different native villages were at, they might only get 6 knives for one beaver. So the supply and demand changed there back and forth. But what I might want to tell everybody also is the French, when they came here, in the whole French regime up until the end of the French and Indian War, the French were more interested in trading with the natives and not obtaining all their land, where the English were just the opposite. They came here to colonize. And even after the French and Indian War, the English still used French voyageurs to carry the trade items and the furs back and forth, because the French voyageurs knew the routes, were more friendly to the different native tribes that were around. And those actually, at Point Bass, what I want to emphasize is the fur trade cabin is right on the shores of the Wisconsin River. These cabins were not just, these outposts were not just put in a spot and hope that the different native tribes would come to them. They did their research, and they would build this outpost fairly close to a native village.